The arrow missed Kira's head by 3 inches, and she knew with cold certainty that the next one would not. She had been traveling the mountain road for 2 days, making her way from the border settlements toward the interior where she hoped prejudice might run less thick, where an orc woman traveling alone might find work that did not involve bloodshed. The bandits had appeared from the tree line like wolves scenting wounded prey, 6 of them on horseback, their faces wrapped in dusty cloth that did nothing to hide the cruel anticipation in their eyes. They circled her now on the narrow mountain path, hemming her against the cliff face where the road dropped away into a ravine filled with jagged rocks and the distant sound of rushing water. Kira's hand moved to the knife at her belt, the only weapon she carried besides her own strength. She was tall for an orc woman, broad-shouldered and muscular from years of hard labor, but 6 mounted men with bows and blades were odds even her people would not favor. Her green skin seemed to glow in the late afternoon sun, and she could see the way the bandits looked at her, assessing whether she was worth the trouble of taking alive, or if they should simply kill her and take whatever coin she carried. "Well, well," one of them said, spurring his horse closer. He was the leader, she could tell, from the way the others deferred to him with their positioning. "What do we have here? A greenskin all alone on our road." "I have paid the toll at the pass," Kira said, keeping her voice steady. "I have the right to travel this road." The leader laughed, a sound like gravel scraping over stone. "The toll gets you past the guardhouse, monster. It does not get you past us." Another bandit moved closer on her left, cutting off any chance of running back the way she had come. "Look at those tusks," he said, his voice mocking. "Bet she could bite through bone with those." Kira's small tusks protruded just slightly from her lower lip, a mark of her heritage that she had never been able to hide. She had learned long ago not to show fear to men like these, that they fed on terror the way vultures fed on carrion. "Let me pass," she said. "I have nothing worth stealing." "Oh, I think you have plenty worth taking," the leader said, and the way he said it made Kira's stomach turn. "Boys, I think we are going to have some fun before the sound of hoofbeats came from up the road, fast and heavy, the rhythm of a horse being pushed to its limits. The bandits turned as one, their circle breaking as a rider came around the bend at a full gallop. Kira saw him in fragments, impressions that registered even as her mind struggled to process what was happening. A large man on a war horse, broad-chested and wearing the practical leather and mail of a soldier, with dark hair that fell to his shoulders and a face that might have been handsome if not for the fury written across it. He did not slow down. The war horse, a massive bay gelding, slammed into the nearest bandit's mount with the force of a battering ram. The smaller horse screamed and went down, throwing its rider into the dirt. The man on the war horse drew his sword in a fluid motion, the blade singing as it cleared the scabbard, and brought it down in an arc that would have split the fallen bandit's skull if the man had not rolled aside at the last second. "Get away from her!" The stranger roared, and his voice carried such command that 2 of the bandits actually obeyed before they caught themselves. The leader recovered first, wheeling his horse around to face this new threat. "This is none of your concern, traveler. Ride on and you will live to see tomorrow." The stranger's eyes, Kira saw, were a startling blue-gray, like storm clouds over the ocean. They fixed on the leader with an intensity that made even Kira want to step back. "I am making it my concern," he said, and his voice was quieter now but no less dangerous. "You have 3 seconds to ride away before I start killing you." The bandits hesitated. 6 against 1 should have been easy odds, but this man did not carry himself like someone who could be easily killed. He sat his horse like he had been born in the saddle, and the way he held his sword suggested he knew exactly how to use it. Kill him, the leader said. 2 bandits charged from opposite sides, a coordinated attack meant to overwhelm through sheer positioning. The stranger spurred his horse forward to meet the one on the right, his blade coming up in a parry that turned into a slash so fast Kira almost missed it. Blood sprayed across the road as the bandit fell from his saddle, clutching at his throat. The stranger did not pause, already turning to face the second attacker. He ducked under a wild swing and drove his elbow into the man's face, then grabbed him by the collar and hauled him from his horse. The bandit hit the ground hard and did not rise. The remaining bandits stared at their fallen companions, and Kira could see the calculation happening behind their eyes. The leader's face had gone pale above his mask. "Fall back," he said, his voice tight. "Fall back." They wheeled their horses and fled down the mountain road, leaving their dead and unconscious behind. The stranger watched them go, his sword still raised, until they disappeared around a bend. Only then did he lower his weapon and turn to look at Kira. For a long moment they simply stared at each other, human and orc, both breathing hard. Kira realized her knife was in her hand, though she did not remember drawing it. The stranger noticed it too, but he made no threatening move. Instead, he sheathed his sword and raised one hand, palm out in a gesture of peace. "Are you hurt?" he asked. Kira found her voice with difficulty. "No, they did not touch me," he nodded, then dismounted in one smooth motion. Up close, he was even larger than she had thought, standing at least a head taller than her considerable height, with broad shoulders and the kind of solid build that came from years of hard training. His face was weathered by sun and wind, with lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often, though he was not smiling now. She guessed him to be in his early 30s, old enough to have seen real combat, young enough to still be in his prime. "My name is Nathan Driscoll," he said. "I am a veteran of the border wars, traveling north to take up a homestead grant." He paused, then added, "I apologize for not arriving sooner. I heard voices raised in anger and feared the worst." "You saved my life," Kira said, and heard the thickness in her own voice. "They would have killed me." "Or worse." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Then I am glad I came when I did." He looked past her down the road where the bandits had disappeared. "They may come back with reinforcements. This road is not safe for anyone traveling alone, and especially not for—" He trailed off, seeming to search for words that would not give offense. "For an orc," Kira finished for him. "You can say it, I know what I am." Something shifted in his expression, a softening she had not expected. "I was going to say, especially not for a woman alone, regardless of her race." He glanced at the dead bandit, then at the one who was beginning to groan and stir. "We should move. I have a camp about an hour's ride from here in a defensible position. You are welcome to shelter there for the night if you wish." Kira hesitated. Every instinct screamed at her to be wary, to refuse, to maintain her distance from this human, who had appeared out of nowhere like something from a bard's tale. She had learned through hard experience that human kindness often came with strings attached, that the same men who smiled at her in the daylight would call her monster in the dark. But the alternative was to continue down this road alone, with bandits who now had a blood debt to settle and darkness coming on fast. And this man, this Nathan Driscoll, had risked his life to save hers without hesitation, without knowing anything about her beyond what his eyes could tell him. "I would be grateful," she said finally. "My name is Kira Darrow. I am traveling north as well, looking for work." Nathan nodded as if this was the most natural thing in the world, an orc and a human making camp together in the wilderness. "Can you ride?" he asked. "I can walk." "The bandits took your horse." "I never had one. Horses do not like my smell." Nathan's mouth quirked in something that might have been a smile. Horses do not like much of anything in my experience. My gelding, Thunder, tolerates me because I feed him oats and do not ask stupid questions. He moved to the dead bandit's horse, which had remained standing a few yards away, reins trailing. The animal shied as Nathan approached, but he spoke to it in a low, soothing voice and managed to catch the reins. "This one will carry you, I think. The saddle is decent enough and she seems sound." Kira wanted to argue, to point out that she had walked for 2 days already and could walk for 2 more, but her feet ached and her shoulders burned from carrying her pack. She moved to the horse and, after a moment's hesitation, swung herself into the saddle. The animal danced sideways, ears flat against her skull, but Kira had grown up around livestock and knew how to project calm authority. She gathered the reins and settled her weight, and gradually the horse stopped fighting. Nathan watched this with an approving nod. "You have a good seat." "Natural rider. My clan kept goats and cattle," Kira said. "I learned to ride the work horses when I was young before." She stopped, not wanting to finish that sentence, not wanting to explain how her clan had cast her out for the crime of showing mercy to a human child caught stealing food. Nathan did not press her. He simply mounted his own horse and gestured up the road. "Stay close. If we ride hard, we can reach my camp before full dark." They rode in silence for the first half-hour, Kira acutely aware of Nathan's presence beside her, of the way he kept his horse positioned slightly ahead and to her left, putting himself between her and any potential threat from the tree line. It was a protective gesture, probably unconscious, and it stirred something in her chest that she did not want to examine too closely. The mountain road climbed higher as they went, switchbacks carved into the stone leading up toward a pass that separated the border territories from the interior valleys. The air grew colder, thin and sharp in Kira's lungs, and she could see snow on the distant peaks even though it was still late summer in the lowlands. The forest on either side grew thick with pine and fir, the undergrowth dense with ferns and moss that glowed emerald in the slanting sunlight. "Tell me if I am overstepping," Nathan said suddenly, breaking the silence. "But you said you are looking for work. What kind of work?" Kira considered her answer carefully. "Anything honest. I have experience with livestock, with farming, with woodwork and leather craft. I can hunt and track, and I am stronger than most men. I had hoped to find a settlement that needed hands for the harvest, or a homesteader who needed help clearing land. The border settlements would not take you." "They would take me for mercenary work," Kira said, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. "Fighting and killing, the only things they think orcs are good for. I am done with that life." Nathan was quiet for a moment. "I understand," he said finally. "I spent 12 years in the border guard, fighting skirmishes and holding forts against raiders. When my term ended, I wanted nothing more than to find a quiet piece of land and spend the rest of my days growing things instead of killing things." He paused. "The homestead grant I received is 60 acres in the northern valleys, forested and wild. The land agent said it would take years to clear enough for proper farming, even with help. I had planned to do it alone, but—" He left the sentence hanging, and Kira's heart began to beat faster. "You are offering me work." "I am offering you a partnership," Nathan said, and now he did turn to look at her, his storm cloud eyes serious. "The land is half wilderness, with a cabin that needs repairs and fields that need clearing. I have coin to buy supplies and tools, but I need someone with your skills and strength to help make it livable. In exchange, you would have room and board, a share of anything we produce, and enough wages to build a stake of your own when you are ready to move on." He hesitated. "I will understand if you refuse. I know that my people have given you little reason to trust us." Kira felt as if she had been running for so long that she had forgotten how to stand still, and now someone was offering her a place to rest. It was too good, too convenient, and yet when she looked at Nathan's face she saw nothing but honest sincerity. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you offer this to me? You do not know me." "I know you were traveling alone through dangerous country, which takes courage," Nathan said. "I know you were ready to fight 6 armed men to defend yourself, which takes heart. And I know that you speak of farming and livestock with more passion than you spoke of fighting, which tells me we want the same things." He smiled then, a small expression that softened his weathered face. "Also, I am a practical man. Clearing 60 acres alone would kill me by winter. With your help, we might actually have a chance." Despite everything, Kira found herself smiling back, her tusks catching slightly on her lower lip. "You make a compelling argument, Nathan Driscoll. Is that a yes?" "It is a yes," Kira said, and felt something loosen in her chest, a knot of tension she had been carrying for so long that she had forgotten it was there. "I will work your homestead with you, and we will see what we can make of this wilderness." They reached Nathan's camp as the sun touched the western peaks, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. He had chosen his position well, Kira noted with approval. The camp was set in a small clearing just off the main road, backed against a cliff face that prevented approach from behind, with a clear view of anyone coming up or down the road. A small stream ran along one side, providing fresh water, and the remains of a fire ring showed that this was a regular camping spot for travelers. Nathan dismounted and immediately set about caring for the horses, unsaddling them and rubbing them down with practiced efficiency. Kira helped, grateful for something useful to do with her hands. The bandit's horse, which she had named Sable in her mind for her dark coat, was skittish but responded well to firm, gentle handling. Thunder, Nathan's gelding, was a calm and steady presence, the kind of horse that would stand through a thunderstorm without flinching. "I will gather firewood," Kira offered when the horses were settled. "Take Thunder," Nathan said, gesturing to where he had tied a leather sling to the saddle. "He can carry more than you can, and it will save your back." When Kira hesitated, he added, "He will not mind. He is used to working." So Kira found herself leading the big war horse into the darkening forest, gathering fallen branches and dead wood while Thunder followed patiently behind. The horse did not shy from her, which was unusual enough to be notable. Most horses could smell the difference between humans and orcs, and they reacted to that difference with fear or aggression. Thunder simply walked where she led him and stood calmly while she loaded wood into the sling. When she returned to camp, Nathan had a fire going and was laying out supplies for dinner. He looked up as she approached and smiled. "You have an efficient method. That is twice what I could have gathered in the same time." "Orcs are raised to waste nothing, especially not effort," Kira said, unloading the wood. "Survival on the border territories is not easy for my people." Nathan nodded, his expression growing somber. "I know. I saw orc settlements during my time in the Guard, and I saw how little your people were given, how hard they had to work for every scrap." He paused, as if choosing his words carefully. "I also saw how bravely they fought when pushed too far, and how fiercely they protected their young. That kind of courage deserves respect, not the treatment your people receive." Kira stared at him, caught off guard by the matter-of-fact way he spoke, as if acknowledging orc humanity was the most natural thing in the world. "You are not like other humans I have met," she said finally. "I have been told I am strange," Nathan admitted with a slight smile. "I think it comes from reading too many books as a child and asking too many uncomfortable questions as an adult." He gestured to the pot he had set over the fire. "I hope you like stew. It is nothing fancy, but it will fill your belly and warm your bones. The stew was actually quite good, rich with dried meat and root vegetables, seasoned with herbs that made Kira's mouth water. They ate in comfortable silence as the stars came out overhead, the mountain air growing cold enough that Kira was grateful for the fire's warmth. When the meal was finished, Nathan produced a battered tin cup and a flask of something that turned out to be decent whiskey. "For the cold," he said, offering her the cup. Kira took a sip and felt the liquid burn pleasantly down her throat. "Thank you, for everything. The rescue, the job, this meal. I am not accustomed to such kindness from humans." Nathan took the cup back and drank, his eyes reflecting the firelight. "Then humans have been fools," he said simply. "Tell me to mind my own business if I am prying, but what drove you to leave your clan? Orcs usually travel in family groups, not alone." Kira felt the familiar pain of old wounds reopening, but Nathan's question held genuine curiosity rather than judgment. "I made a choice my clan could not forgive," she said slowly. "There was a human boy, no more than 8 or 9 years old, caught stealing food from our stores. The clan elders wanted to make an example of him, to break his hands so he could not steal again. I argued that he was a child, that mercy would serve us better than cruelty. When they would not listen, I helped him escape." Nathan's eyes widened. "They cast you out for that." "They said I had betrayed my own people for a human, that I had chosen the enemy over my clan. My mother tried to speak for me, but the elder's word was final." Kira stared into the fire, remembering that terrible day. "So I left. I have been traveling ever since, looking for a place where I might belong." "Your mother," Nathan said softly. "Does she know where you are?" "I sent word when I could, but I do not know if she received it. Orc clans move with the seasons, and I have been moving too." Kira shook her head. "It does not matter. I cannot go back, even if I wanted to." Nathan was quiet for a long moment, turning the cup in his hands. "For what it is worth," he said finally, "I think you made the right choice. A society that cannot show mercy to children is a society that has lost its soul." Kira felt tears prick at her eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. "Thank you," she managed. "You are the first person to say that to me." They sat in silence after that, passing the cup back and forth until the fire burned down to embers and exhaustion pulled at Kira's bones. Nathan showed her where to lay out her bedroll, positioning himself between her and the road in that same unconsciously protective way he had ridden earlier. Kira wanted to tell him that she could defend herself, that she did not need his protection, but the words would not come. Instead, she wrapped herself in her blanket and stared up at the stars, listening to the sound of Nathan's breathing as he fell asleep. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Kira felt safe. They broke camp at dawn and continued north, following the mountain road as it climbed toward the high pass. The weather held clear and cold, the sun bright enough to make Kira squint, but not warm enough to take the bite from the wind. They rode side by side when the road was wide enough, and Nathan proved to be an easy traveling companion. He did not push for conversation when she was silent, but when they did talk, he listened with genuine interest to her observations about the land and the wildlife they passed. "How much further to your homestead?" Kira asked as they stopped to water the horses at a mountain spring. "3 days if the weather holds. Maybe 4, Nathan said, crouching to fill his water skin. "We will cross the pass tomorrow and start descending into the northern valleys." "The land agent said my grant is in the foothills, where the forest meets the grasslands. Good soil, plenty of water, but completely wild." "That is the best kind of land," Kira said and meant it. "Land that has been farmed before comes with the previous owner's mistakes already built in. Wild land gives you a chance to do things right from the start." Nathan grinned at her. See, this is exactly why I need you as a partner. I would have spent the first season fighting with the land instead of working with it. They reached the pass the next afternoon, a wind-swept saddle between two peaks where the road was barely wide enough for a wagon. The view from the top stole Kira's breath. Behind them, the southern territories stretched out in a patchwork of farms and forests, the border river a silver thread in the distance. Ahead, the northern valleys rolled out like a green ocean, largely unsettled except for scattered homesteads and a few small villages tucked into the folds of the hills. There, Nathan said, pointing to a valley that looked like all the others to Kira's untrained eye. That is where we are headed. The land agent marked it on my map. They descended into the northern valleys over the next 2 days, and Kira felt something in herself begin to unwind with each mile they put between themselves and the border territories. The air here smelled cleaner, green and growing, without the constant underlying scent of smoke and blood that permeated the borderlands. They passed through a small village on the second day, and Kira braced herself for the usual stares and muttered insults. But while people did stare, no one challenged her presence or demanded that she leave. Nathan bought supplies with easy confidence, treating her as an equal partner in all discussions, and if the shopkeeper thought it odd that a human and an orc were traveling together, she kept her opinions to herself. That went better than I expected, Kira admitted as they rode out of the village. The north is different from the border territories, Nathan said. Still prejudiced, still difficult, but the people here have less reason to hate orcs on sight. The wars feel more distant, more like history than current events. He paused. It is not perfect, and you will still face discrimination, but it is better than what you left behind. Kira nodded, allowing herself a small measure of hope. Maybe here in these green valleys far from the border, she could finally build something that lasted. They reached Nathan's homestead on the afternoon of the 4th day, and Kira's first sight of it was both promising and daunting. The land was everything Nathan had described. 60 acres of mixed forest and meadow, with a small creek running through the center and hills rising to the north and west. The cabin sat on a gentle rise overlooking the creek, a sturdy log structure that had clearly been built with skill but had fallen into disrepair over the years. The roof sagged on one side, the shutters hung crooked, and half the chinking between the logs had crumbled away. The previous owner died without heirs, Nathan explained as they dismounted. The land reverted to the crown, which made it available for homestead grants. The land agent was honest about its condition, at least. Kira walked around the cabin, assessing the damage with a practiced eye. The foundation is sound, she said. That is the most important thing. The roof needs complete replacement and we will have to rechink all the walls before winter, but the bones are good. This is salvageable. Nathan looked relieved. I was worried you would tell me we need to tear it down and start over. Starting over is sometimes easier, Kira admitted. But this cabin has good timber and a solid frame. It would be wasteful to destroy that. She pointed to a stand of straight pines on the western edge of the property. We can use those for roof poles and harvest bark for shingles. Do you have tools? A full kit, including a good axe and saw. Nathan's smile widened. I am starting to think this might actually work. They spent the rest of the daylight hours unloading supplies and making the cabin minimally habitable for the night. The interior was better than the exterior suggested, with a large stone fireplace that still drew well and enough floor space to accommodate sleeping areas and a work table. The previous owner had left behind some basic furniture, a rough-hewn table, 2 chairs, and a bed frame that would need a new rope mattress. You take the bed, Nathan said when Kira eyed it doubtfully. I have been sleeping on the ground for days anyway. One more night will not kill me. We should share it, Kira said, then felt heat rise in her cheeks at how that sounded. I mean, we should take turns. You take it tonight, I will take it tomorrow night. That is fair. Nathan looked amused but did not argue. Fair it is, then. They fell into an easy routine over the following weeks. Mornings were devoted to repairs on the cabin, with Nathan and Kira working side by side to replace rotted logs, rechink the walls, and rebuild the roof. Nathan proved to be a skilled carpenter, his hands steady and sure as he shaped timber and drove nails. Kira's strength allowed her to do the heavy lifting, hauling logs and stones that would have required multiple men. They worked well together, each anticipating the other's needs, communicating as much through gesture as through words. Afternoons were spent exploring the property, mapping out where they would clear land for fields, where they would build a barn and animal pens, where the best hunting was to be found. Nathan had a surveyor's eye for terrain, while Kira's experience with livestock helped her identify the best grazing areas and water sources. They walked the property boundaries together, marking trees and setting stakes, planning for a future that felt more real with each passing day. Evenings were Kira's favorite time. They would return to the cabin tired and dirty, wash in the creek, and then cook dinner together over the fireplace. Nathan taught her how to make bread using a covered pot buried in the coals, while Kira showed him how to prepare game in the orc style, with herbs and wild vegetables that brought out the natural flavors. They talked about everything and nothing. Nathan's years in the border guard, Kira's childhood in the clan, their hopes and fears for the homestead, the books Nathan had read, and the stories Kira's mother had told her. It was during one of these evening conversations, about a month into their partnership, that Kira realized she was happy. The thought caught her by surprise, stopping her mid-sentence while Nathan looked at her curiously. "Something wrong?" he asked. "No," Kira said, and felt a smile spread across her face. "Nothing is wrong. Everything is right, actually. I was just realizing that I am happy here." Nathan's expression softened. "I am glad. You deserve happiness, Kira." The way he said her name sent a small thrill through her chest, but Kira pushed the feeling aside. Nathan was her business partner, her friend, nothing more. It would be foolish to imagine otherwise, foolish and dangerous. Humans and orcs did not build lives together, not in that way. The world would never allow it. But as autumn began to paint the valley in shades of gold and crimson, Kira found it harder and harder to ignore the way her heart jumped when Nathan smiled at her, or the warmth that spread through her chest when he laughed at one of her observations. She caught herself watching him when he worked, admiring the way his shoulders moved under his shirt, the concentration on his face when he was solving a problem. She told herself it was simply appreciation for a skilled craftsman, but she knew she was lying. Nathan, for his part, seemed oblivious to her growing feelings. He treated her with the same steady kindness and respect he had shown from the beginning, never crossing the invisible line that separated partnership from something deeper. Kira was grateful for this, even as part of her wished he would look at her the way she caught herself looking at him. The first real test of their partnership came in late autumn, when a farmer from the nearest neighboring homestead rode up to their cabin. He was a weathered man in his 50s, with suspicious eyes and a mouth set in a permanent frown. He did not dismount when Nathan came out to greet him, and his gaze lingered on Kira with obvious distaste. "Name is Marcus Talbot," he said to Nathan, pointedly ignoring Kira. "I own the land 2 miles east of here. Heard you had claimed the old Hendricks place." "That is right," Nathan said, his voice polite but cool. "Nathan Driscoll. This is my business partner, Kira Darrow." Talbot's lip curled. Business partner, that is what we are calling it now. He spat into the dirt. Look, Driscoll, I do not care what you do on your own land, but I am going to say this plain. My family will not be associating with greenskins. You want to lie down with monsters, that is your business, but do not expect decent folk to welcome you at their tables. Kira felt her hands curl into fists, but Nathan spoke before she could. His voice was quiet and cold as winter ice. Let me make something equally plain, Talbot. Kira is not a monster, and I will not tolerate anyone suggesting otherwise. She is a skilled and honest partner, and she has as much right to homestead this land as anyone. If that offends your delicate sensibilities, you are welcome to keep your distance. Talbot's face reddened. You are making a mistake, Driscoll. The other homesteaders will not look kindly on this. You are going to find yourself isolated, unable to trade or ask for help when you need it. Then I will manage without, Nathan said flatly. Now, unless you have actual business to discuss, I suggest you ride on. Talbot stared at Nathan for a long moment, then turned his horse and rode away without another word. Kira watched him go, her heart beating hard in her chest. You did not have to do that, she said quietly. He is right. The other homesteaders will turn against you if you stand with me. Nathan turned to her, and the anger in his eyes had transformed into something gentler. Kira, I chose you as my partner knowing exactly what that would mean. I am not going to abandon you the first time someone says something unpleasant. He reached out as if to touch her shoulder, then seemed to think better of it and dropped his hand. We are in this together. Whatever comes, we face it together. Kira felt something crack in her chest, some wall she had built around her heart to protect herself from disappointment. Thank you, she said, and the words felt inadequate for what she was feeling. Nathan just smiled. Come on. That roof is not going to finish itself. Talbot's prediction proved accurate. Over the following weeks, as Nathan and Kira completed their preparations for winter, it became clear that the neighboring homesteaders were closing ranks against them. When Nathan rode to the village to trade for supplies, he was met with cold politeness and inflated prices. Offers of help with the harvest, which Nathan had been told to expect as part of frontier hospitality, never materialized. They were being quietly but thoroughly shunned. Nathan bore it all with good humor, but Kira could see the strain it put on him. He had sacrificed his standing in the community for her sake, and no matter how much he insisted it was worth it, she could not shake the guilt that gnawed at her conscience. You should send me away, she said one evening as they sat by the fire. The first snow had fallen that afternoon, dusting the valley in white. Find a human partner, someone the neighbors will accept. You do not deserve to be treated like an outcast. Nathan looked at her as if she had suggested he cut off his own arm. Kira, no, absolutely not. But no, he repeated more firmly. Listen to me. This homestead would not exist without you. You have worked as hard as I have, probably harder. You have every right to the home we have built together, and I will not let prejudiced fools drive you away. He leaned forward, his storm cloud eyes intense. Besides, I do not want a different partner, I want you. The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meanings that neither of them dared to examine too closely. Kira felt her breath catch, felt the heat rise in her cheeks. Nathan. He seemed to realize what he had said and looked away, clearing his throat. I mean, you are a good partner, a good friend. I would not want to lose that. Right, Kira said, ignoring the way her heart was hammering against her ribs. Of course. They did not speak of it again, but something had shifted between them, subtle as a change in the wind. Kira caught Nathan watching her sometimes, his expression thoughtful, almost yearning. She wondered if he saw the same thing in her face when she looked at him. Winter arrived in earnest, blanketing the valley in snow and driving them to spend long hours inside the cabin. They kept busy with indoor work, making furniture and tools, mending clothes, planning for the spring planting. The close quarters forced an intimacy that was both comfortable and charged with tension. They learned each other's habits and rhythms, moved around each other in the small space with an ease that spoke of deep familiarity. One night, during a particularly fierce blizzard, the cabin's warmth and the howling wind outside created a pocket of isolation that felt separate from the rest of the world. They sat by the fire, Kira mending a shirt while Nathan sharpened tools, and the silence between them was companionable rather than awkward. "Can I ask you something personal?" Nathan said suddenly. Kira looked up from her mending. "You can ask, I may not answer," he smiled slightly. "Fair enough." He set down the whetstone and met her eyes. "Have you ever been in love?" The question caught Kira off guard. "Why do you ask?" "Curiosity," Nathan said. "And because I am trying to understand something about myself, and I thought perhaps talking about it might help." Kira's heart began to beat faster. "I was betrothed once when I was younger, a warrior from a neighboring clan. It was an arrangement made by our families, not a love match. He died in a border skirmish before we could be married." She paused. "I mourned him, but I do not think I loved him." "Not the way the bards sing about anyway." Nathan nodded slowly. "I have never been in love either. I had dalliances when I was younger, soldiers' romances that burned hot and fast and left nothing behind. I always thought that when I met the right person I would know. That it would be obvious, clear as daylight. And," Kira prompted, hardly daring to breathe. "And I am starting to think it is not like that at all," Nathan said quietly. "I think maybe love is something that grows slowly, in the spaces between ordinary moments. In shared work and quiet conversations and the comfortable silences that come from truly knowing another person." He looked at her, and his eyes were full of something that made Kira's chest ache. "I think maybe I have been in love for weeks now, and only just realized it." Kira felt as if the ground had dropped out from under her. "Nathan, what are you saying?" He set down the tool he was holding and moved to sit beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "I am saying that I love you, Kira. I love your strength and your kindness, your sharp mind and your generous heart. I love the way you laugh when something surprises you, and the way you talk to the horses like they are old friends. I love working beside you and eating meals with you and falling asleep knowing you are safe under the same roof." He reached out and very carefully took her hand. His skin was warm against her green fingers. "I know this is complicated. I know the world will not make it easy for us. But I have faced down bandits and border wars and wilderness, and I am not afraid of narrow-minded neighbors. I am only afraid of losing you." Kira felt tears spilling down her cheeks, hot against her cold skin. "I love you too," she whispered. "I have been trying so hard not to, trying to be practical and sensible and protect myself from disappointment. But I love you, Nathan. I think I have loved you since the day you rode into that bandit circle and fought for me without knowing anything about me except that I needed help." Nathan's face broke into a smile so bright it rivaled the sun. He raised his free hand and with infinite gentleness cupped her cheek. "May I kiss you?" "Yes," Kira breathed, and then his lips were on hers, soft and warm and perfect. The kiss was tender, questioning, and Kira answered it by wrapping her arms around his neck and pulling him closer. Nathan made a small sound of surprise and pleasure, his hands moving to her waist, and the kiss deepened into something that spoke of months of denied longing finally allowed free rein. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "I have wanted to do that for so long," he admitted. "I wish you had done it sooner," Kira said, and laughed at the expression on his face. I have been driving myself mad, wondering if you felt the same way I did. I did not want to presume, Nathan said, and I worried that you might think I had offered you the partnership just to take advantage somehow. I wanted you to know that I respected you first, that I saw you as an equal. Kira kissed him again, softer this time. You are a good man, Nathan Driscoll, probably too good for your own peace of mind. They sat by the fire for hours after that, talking and kissing and making plans for a future that suddenly seemed infinitely brighter. They agreed to keep their relationship private for now, not out of shame but out of practical caution. The neighbors were already hostile, no need to give them more ammunition. But within the walls of their cabin, they allowed themselves to be what they truly were. Two people who had found each other against all odds and refused to let the world's prejudices destroy what they had built. Winter passed slowly, marked by quiet joys and deepening intimacy. Nathan and Kira grew into their love the way plants grew toward sunlight, naturally and inevitably. They learned each other's bodies with the same care and attention they had learned each other's minds, discovering pleasures that left them breathless and amazed. They talked about everything, their fears and hopes, their past traumas and future dreams. Nathan told Kira about the friends he had lost in the border wars, the guilt he still carried for surviving when so many others had not. Kira told him about her mother, about the pain of being cast out from the only family she had ever known, about the loneliness that had haunted her until the day he had appeared on that mountain road like an answer to a prayer she had not known how to speak. "Do you think your mother would approve of me?" Nathan asked one night as they lay tangled together in the bed they now shared openly. Kira considered the question seriously. "I think she would love you," she said finally. "She always told me that honor matters more than blood, that character is what makes a person worthy. You have more honor than any man I have ever met, human or orc." Nathan kissed her temple. "I would like to meet her someday if that is possible." "Maybe," Kira said, allowing herself to hope. "Maybe when we have proven that this life we are building is real and lasting, I can reach out to her. Let her know that I am happy, that I found someone who sees me as I am and loves me anyway." "Not anyway," Nathan corrected gently. "I do not love you despite who you are. I love you because of who you are." Spring came late that year, but when it arrived it brought an explosion of green life that transformed the valley into something magical. Nathan and Kira threw themselves into the work of planting their first crops, clearing and preparing fields for wheat and oats and vegetables. They built a small barn and acquired livestock, chickens, a pair of goats, and eventually a cow that Kira named Marigold for her warm brown color. The work was backbreaking but satisfying, and Kira had never been happier. She and Nathan worked side by side from dawn until dusk, and at night they collapsed into bed together, too tired for anything but holding each other close. It was a simple life, a hard life, but it was theirs. The neighbors continued to shun them, but Kira and Nathan found they did not mind as much as they had expected. They had each other, and that was enough. When they needed supplies they could not produce themselves, they rode to the village and endured the cold shoulders and inflated prices. When they needed help with a task too large for two people, they figured it out through ingenuity and sheer stubborn determination. The test came in early summer, when a fire broke out in the forest to the west of their property. It had been a dry spring, and the flames spread quickly, driven by high winds. Nathan and Kira saw the smoke from their fields and immediately understood the danger. If the fire jumped the creek, it would consume their cabin and everything they had worked for. They spent 2 days fighting the blaze, digging fire breaks and hauling water, until they were black with soot and trembling with exhaustion. They managed to save their property, but the effort nearly killed them both. On the third day, when the fire had finally burned itself out against the creek's barrier, they collapsed in their cabin and slept for 16 hours straight. When they woke, there were people in their yard. Kira's first instinct was alarm, but Nathan put a calming hand on her shoulder. "Wait," he said. "Look." She looked. There were half a dozen neighbors in their yard, including Marcus Talbot, and they had brought tools and supplies. As Nathan and Kira emerged from the cabin, Talbot approached with an expression that was equal parts shame and determination. "We saw the smoke," he said without preamble. "We saw that you were fighting it alone, and we realized that we have been acting like damn fools." He cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. No one should have to face that kind of threat without help, not even. He trailed off, looking at Kira. "Not even an orc," Kira finished for him, keeping her voice neutral. Talbot had the grace to look ashamed. "I was going to say, not even someone I have disagreed with, but you are right. I have treated you poorly because of what you are rather than who you are. That was wrong of me." "Yes," Kira said flatly. "It was. We would like to help repair whatever damage the fire did," Talbot continued, "and to offer a proper welcome to the valley, late though it may be." Nathan looked at Kira, a question in his eyes. She could see that he would send these people away if she asked him to, that her feelings mattered more to him than neighborly relations. But she could also see the genuine contrition in Talbot's face, and the uncertainty in the faces of the other homesteaders. They were trying in their clumsy way to make amends. "Very well," Kira said. "We accept your help and your apology. But understand this, I am not going anywhere. This is my home, same as it is Nathan's. If you cannot respect that, then we have nothing further to discuss." Talbot nodded slowly. "Fair enough. I reckon we can live with that." The neighbors stayed for 3 days, helping to repair fire damage and shore up their defenses in case of future blazes. It was awkward at first, with long silences and uncertain glances, but gradually the ice began to thaw. The other homesteaders saw how hard Kira and Nathan worked, saw the careful way they had planned and built their homestead, and grudging respect began to replace prejudice. On the last evening, Talbot's wife brought over a basket of fresh bread and preserves. She handed it to Kira directly, meeting her eyes. "My name is Sarah," she said. "I wanted to apologize for my husband's rudeness and for my own. You have proven yourself a good neighbor and a hard worker. That should have been enough from the start." Kira took the basket, feeling her throat tighten. "Thank you, Sarah. That means more than you know." After the neighbors left, Nathan pulled Kira into his arms and held her tight. "You were amazing," he said into her hair. "Strong and gracious and everything I love about you." "I did not do it for them," Kira admitted. "I did it for us, for the life we are building here. We cannot live completely isolated no matter how much we might want to." "Still," Nathan said, "it took courage to accept their apology, to give them a second chance." Kira smiled against his chest. "I had a good teacher in mercy and second chances." Summer rolled on, and the valley became a place of plenty. Their crops grew strong and green, the livestock thrived, and Nathan and Kira's love deepened with each passing day. The neighbors, true to their word, began to include them in the valley's social life. It was gradual, awkward, but genuine. Invitations to harvest dinners appeared. Sarah Talbot started stopping by to exchange recipes and gossip. The other homesteaders began consulting Nathan and Kira on farming questions, recognizing their combined expertise. It was not perfect. There were still people who would not meet Kira's eyes, still muttered comments when they thought she could not hear. But it was better than anything Kira had dared hope for back, when she was traveling alone on that mountain road, waiting for bandits to kill her. One evening in late summer, as the sun set over the valley in a blaze of orange and pink, Nathan took Kira's hand and led her to the highest point on their property. From there, they could see everything they had built: the cabin with its solid roof, the barn and animal pens, the fields heavy with grain ready for harvest, the creek winding through it all like a silver ribbon. "This is ours," Nathan said, his voice full of quiet wonder. "We built this together from nothing." "From less than nothing," Kira corrected with a smile. "We built it from ruins and wilderness and the ashes of our old lives." Nathan turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "I want to spend the rest of my life building with you, Kira. I want to wake up beside you every morning and fall asleep holding you every night. I want to face whatever challenges come our way together, knowing that we are stronger united than we ever could be apart." He took a deep breath. "I know we cannot marry in a human church, and I do not know the orc customs well enough to know if this is appropriate, but I am asking you anyway. Will you be my wife? Will you bind your life to mine formally and forever?" Kira felt tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling so hard her cheeks hurt. "Yes," she said. "Yes, Nathan, I will marry you. I will be your wife and you will be my husband, and we will make our own traditions if the world has none that fit us." Nathan laughed, a sound of pure joy, and swept her into his arms. He spun her around until they were both dizzy and breathless, then kissed her with a passion that spoke of promises and futures and love that would not be denied. They were married a month later, in a ceremony of their own devising. Nathan had ridden to the village and consulted with the local magistrate about what was legally required, and they had filed the appropriate papers declaring their intent to marry. The magistrate had been dubious but professional, acknowledging that while human orc marriages were rare, they were not technically illegal. That was enough. For the ceremony itself, they chose a spot on their property where the creek widened into a small pool, surrounded by willows and wildflowers. They invited the neighbors, half expecting no one to come, but were surprised when nearly a dozen people arrived, including Marcus and Sarah Talbot. Nathan wore his best clothes, his hair neatly combed for once, while Kira wore a dress that Sarah had helped her make, dyed green to complement her skin. They wrote their own vows, speaking them before their small audience with voices that shook with emotion. Nathan promised to honor Kira's strength and cherish her kindness, to stand with her against whatever hardships came, to love her with all he was and all he would become. Kira promised to match his courage with her own, to build a life with him that honored both their peoples, to love him fiercely and without reservation for all the years they were granted. When they were finished, Sarah produced a braided cord of green and gold and used it to bind their hands together in the old style, a symbol of two lives becoming one. "By the authority vested in me by absolutely no one," she said with a slight smile, "I declare you married in the eyes of everyone here who matters. You may kiss your wife, Nathan Driscoll." Nathan did exactly that, and the small crowd cheered. The celebration that followed was simple but heartfelt. The neighbors had brought food and drink, and they feasted in the meadow as the sun set and the stars came out. Marcus Talbot, emboldened by drink, stood and raised his cup. "I will admit that when I first heard about you two, I thought it was madness," he said. "Human and orc, it made no sense to me. But I have watched you build this homestead, watched how you work together and care for each other, and I have come to understand that love does not care about skin color or tusks or pointed ears. Love is what you make it, and you two have made something beautiful. So here is to Nathan and Kira Driscoll, and may their marriage be long and prosperous." Everyone drank to that, and Kira felt something settle in her chest, a sense of belonging that she had not felt since leaving her clan. She looked around at these people, these humans who had every reason to reject her but who had chosen instead to accept her, and she felt grateful beyond words. "Thank you," she said, standing and raising her own cup. "Thank you all for being here, for witnessing our vows, for giving us a chance when you did not have to. You have given me something I thought I had lost forever, a community, a place to belong. Nathan and I will work hard to be good neighbors in return, and to prove that bridges can be built between our peoples if we are all willing to try." The neighbors left as the night grew late, until finally Nathan and Kira were alone under the stars. They walked hand in hand back to their cabin, this home they had built together, and Nathan carried Kira across the threshold with a grin that made her laugh. "We did it," he said, setting her down carefully. "We actually did it." "We did," Kira agreed, pulling him close. "Against all odds, against all expectations. We built a life together, and now we have made it official." They made love that night with a tenderness and intensity that left them both trembling, whispering promises and endearments in the darkness. Afterwards, as they lay tangled together in the bed they would share for the rest of their lives, Nathan traced idle patterns on Kira's shoulder. "You ever think about what would have happened if I had not come along that day?" he asked quietly. "If I had been 5 minutes later or had taken a different road?" "I try not to," Kira admitted. "It frightens me to think how close I came to dying that day, or worse." "I think about it sometimes," Nathan said, "and I think that maybe it was not chance at all. Maybe some force in the universe looked at the two of us, broken and lost in our different ways, and decided we needed each other, that we could heal together in ways we never could alone." Kira smiled in the darkness. "You are getting philosophical in your old age, husband." "I am allowed to be philosophical on my wedding night," Nathan protested, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "Besides, I am not old. I am experienced." "Experienced at what?" "At loving you," Nathan said simply. "And I plan to spend the rest of my life getting even better at it." Autumn came again, and with it the first anniversary of the day they had met on that mountain road. Nathan surprised Kira by presenting her with a gift he had been working on in secret. A wooden chest carved with intricate designs that blended human and orc artistic traditions. Inside, he had placed a carefully folded letter. "Read it," he said, watching her face. Kira unfolded the letter and felt her breath catch. It was addressed to her mother, written in Nathan's careful hand, and it explained everything that had happened over the past year. It told of their partnership and their homestead, their growing love and their marriage, their acceptance by the community. It was honest and heartfelt, and it ended with an invitation for Kira's mother to visit them, to see for herself that her daughter was happy and thriving. "Nathan," Kira whispered, "you did this for me." "I did it for us," Nathan corrected. "You miss your mother. You think about her every day. I can see it in your eyes. I thought maybe if she knew how things stand, she might be willing to visit. To see that you did not betray your people by choosing mercy. You simply chose a different path." Kira threw her arms around his neck, unable to speak through her tears. Nathan held her close, stroking her hair until she finally found her voice. "How do we send it?" "I do not even know where her clan is anymore." "I made inquiries," Nathan said. "There is a trading post on the border that serves as a message center for the orc clans. We can send it there, addressed to her by name, and the traders will ensure it reaches her eventually." They sent the letter the next week, riding together to the trading post. Kira felt her heart pound as she handed the sealed letter to the grizzled trader, who took it with a knowing look. "Hoping for reconciliation, are you?" he asked. "Something like that," Kira said. "Well, I will make sure it gets where it needs to go. Can't promise anything beyond that." The trader paused, looking between Kira and Nathan. For what it's worth, I have seen a lot of strange partnerships in my time on the border. Most of them end badly. But you two look like you might actually make it work. We intend to, Nathan said, taking Kira's hand. They waited through the winter, trying not to hope too hard, trying not to imagine disappointment. Spring came again, and with it the work of planting and expansion. Nathan and Kira had plans to build a larger barn and to clear more fields for planting. They were talking about acquiring a few sheep, maybe a second cow. It was on a bright morning in late spring, nearly 2 years after they had first met, that a rider appeared on the road leading to their homestead. Kira was working in the garden when she heard Thunder's warning whinny from the pasture. She straightened, shading her eyes against the sun, and felt her heart stop. The rider was an orc woman, older than Kira but with the same strong build and green skin. She rode a sturdy mountain pony, and as she drew closer, Kira could see the familiar patterns of clan tattoos on her arms. "Mother," Kira whispered, hardly daring to believe it. The woman dismounted and stood for a moment just looking at her daughter. Then her face crumpled and she opened her arms. "Kira, my daughter, my heart." Kira ran to her and they held each other, both of them crying, years of separation and longing pouring out in that single embrace. When they finally pulled apart, Kira's mother cupped her face and looked at her searchingly. "You are well," she said, and it was not quite a question. "You are healthy and strong and—" She paused and a smile tugged at her lips. "You are happy, I can see it in your eyes." "I am," Kira said. "Mother, I am so happy. There is so much I need to tell you, so much has happened." "I know," her mother said. "I received your letter, that is why I came." She looked past Kira to where Nathan had emerged from the cabin, drawn by the sound of voices. "Is that him? You're human?" "That is Nathan," Kira confirmed. "My husband." Nathan approached cautiously, clearly uncertain of his reception. He stopped a respectful distance away and inclined his head. "You are welcome here, honored mother. Your daughter speaks of you often and with great love." Kira's mother studied Nathan with the same careful attention she had given Kira. After a long moment, she nodded. "You have kind eyes," she said, "and you make my daughter happy. That is enough for now." She paused, then added with a slight smile, "Though I expect to hear the full story of how a human soldier convinced my stubborn daughter to trust him. That must have been quite a feat." "It was mutual," Nathan said, relaxing slightly. "She convinced me to trust her as well, which was equally challenging." Kira's mother stayed for a week, and it was one of the best weeks of Kira's life. Her mother helped in the fields and the garden, cooked traditional orc meals that made Kira cry with nostalgia, and told stories of the clan's travels and fortunes. She and Nathan developed a cautious friendship, built on mutual respect and their shared love for Kira. On the last evening, as they sat around the fire, Kira's mother took both their hands. "I was angry when you left the clan," she said to Kira. "Angry at the elders for their harshness, angry at you for forcing their hand, angry at the whole situation. But I see now that you found something better than what you left behind. You found someone who sees your worth, who values your strength and your kindness equally. You have built a life that honors both your people and his, and that takes more courage than any battle." She turned to Nathan. "I do not fully understand the bond between you and my daughter. The ways of humans are strange to me, and this mixing of peoples is not what I was raised to accept. But I can see that you love her truly, that you have given her safety and respect and a home. For that, you have my gratitude and my blessing." "Thank you," Nathan said quietly. "That means more than you know." Kira's mother left the next morning, but the visit had healed something in Kira that she had not fully realized was broken. She knew now that she was not completely cut off from her people, that bridges could be maintained even across great distances and cultural divides. Her mother promised to visit again, and to carry word back to the clan of Kira's success. Maybe, in time, other orc families would see what Kira and Nathan had built and understand that there were paths forward besides endless conflict. The years that followed were good ones. Nathan and Kira expanded their homestead steadily, adding livestock and acreage, becoming prosperous by frontier standards. They remained active in the valley's community, helping neighbors and accepting help in return. Other orc families began to settle in the northern valleys, drawn by word of Kira's acceptance. And Nathan and Kira worked to bridge the gap between the human and orc homesteaders, mediating disputes and fostering understanding. They faced challenges, of course. There were crop failures and harsh winters, illnesses and injuries that tested their resolve. There were people who never accepted their marriage, who muttered about abominations and unnatural unions. But they faced all of it together, drawing strength from each other, and they never regretted their choice to build a life as partners. 5 years after their wedding, Kira discovered she was pregnant. The pregnancy was difficult, complicated by the biological differences between humans and orcs, but their neighbors rallied around them. Sarah Talbot helped Kira through the worst of it, and when the time came, half the valley's women were there to assist with the birth. Their daughter was born on a summer morning, with her father's storm-cloud eyes and her mother's green-tinted skin. She was beautiful and strong, a living bridge between two peoples, and they named her Alina after Nathan's mother. Nathan held his daughter with tears streaming down his face. "She is perfect," he whispered. "Absolutely perfect." Kira, exhausted but radiant, reached up to touch Alina's tiny fist. "She is ours," she said, "the best of both of us." As Alina grew, it became clear that she had inherited her parents' best qualities: Nathan's kindness and steadiness, Kira's strength and practical wisdom. She moved between the human and orc communities with an ease that her parents had never quite achieved, accepted by both sides as proof that cooperation was possible. More children followed. A son named Marcus after the neighbor who had first extended the olive branch, and another daughter they named Kira after her mother, at the elder Kira's insistence. The homestead rang with laughter and children's voices, and Nathan and Kira watched their family grow with joy and wonder. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Nathan took Kira back to the high point on their property where he had proposed. The valley below was transformed from what it had been that first day. More homesteads, more cleared land, more evidence of thriving community. Their own property had grown and prospered beyond anything they had imagined, and their children played in the meadow below, watched over by a mixed group of human and orc neighbors who had become extended family. "You remember what I said to you that day on the mountain road?" Nathan asked, putting his arm around Kira's shoulders. "When I offered you the partnership, you said you wanted someone with my skills and strength," Kira recalled. "You said that clearing 60 acres alone would kill you by winter." Nathan laughed. "I did say that. And I was right, it would have." He turned her to face him, his hands warm on her shoulders. "But what I did not say, what I did not even know yet, was that I was not just looking for a business partner. I was looking for someone to share my life with, someone who would challenge me and support me and love me even when I was being difficult. I was looking for you, Kira. I just did not know it until I found you." Kira leaned into his embrace, feeling the solid strength of him, the warmth that had been her anchor through years of building and growing. "I was looking for a place to belong," she said. "A place where I could be myself without apology. I found it here with you." "We built something impossible," Nathan said, looking out over the valley. Something that was not supposed to work, that everyone said would fail. And we made it not just work, but thrive. We raise children who will grow up knowing that love and respect matter more than species or skin color. We created a community that is learning to move past old prejudices. That is no small thing. No, Kira agreed. It is not. They stood there together as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Below them, their children's laughter carried on the evening breeze, and smoke rose from a dozen chimneys where mixed families prepared evening meals. It was not the world that either of them had been born into, but it was the world they had created together, one day at a time. "I love you," Nathan said, as he had said so many times over the years, "today and always." "And I love you," Kira replied, the words as true now as they had been the first time she spoke them. "My husband, my partner, my heart." They walked back down to the cabin hand in hand, ready to face whatever the future held, secure in the knowledge that they would face it together. Behind them, the valley settled into evening, peaceful and prosperous, a testament to what could be built when two people chose love over fear, partnership over prejudice, and hope over despair. The bandits who had circled Kira on that mountain, road so many years ago, had intended to destroy her. But instead, they had inadvertently set in motion a chain of events that changed not just her life, but the life of an entire community. Nathan's decision to ride in and take the orc woman to safety had been instinctive, born of simple human decency. But its ripples spread far beyond that single moment. Years continued to pass, and the homestead became a place of refuge for others who found themselves caught between worlds. Orc youths cast out by traditionalist clans found work and welcome there. Human travelers facing prejudice for their sympathy toward orcs found allies and friends. Nathan and Kira's home became known throughout the northern valleys as a place where bridges were built rather than walls raised. Their children grew into remarkable adults. Alina, their eldest, became a mediator between human and orc communities, traveling throughout the frontier to help resolve disputes and foster understanding. Marcus became a farmer like his parents, but he innovated new techniques by combining human agricultural knowledge with orc animal husbandry practices. Little Kira showed her grandmother's fierce independence and her father's scholarly bent, and she began collecting stories and histories from both peoples, determined to create a written record that honored both traditions. Nathan and Kira grew old together, their hair graying, their hands becoming weathered with work and years. But their love never diminished. If anything, it grew deeper and more comfortable, like a well-worn path or a favorite blanket. They still held hands when they walked, still kissed each other goodnight, still found joy in the simple act of being together. On their 25th wedding anniversary, the valley threw them a celebration that lasted 3 days. Humans and orcs from throughout the region came to honor them, to thank them for the example they had set, to celebrate the bridge they had built. Marcus Talbot, now in his 80s and using a cane, stood up to offer a toast. 25 years ago, he said, his voice strong despite his age, I told Nathan Driscoll that he was making a mistake by partnering with an orc woman. I told him he would be isolated, unable to trade or ask for help. I was wrong on every count. He looked at Nathan and Kira, his eyes bright with unshed tears. You two taught this valley what it means to look past surface differences and see the person underneath. You taught us that courage is not about fighting enemies, but about loving across boundaries. You built not just a homestead, but a community. Thank you, both of you, for being stubborn enough to prove old fools like me wrong. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Nathan and Kira stood together, overwhelmed by the outpouring of love and respect. Kira's mother, who had become a regular visitor over the years and was now living with them in her old age, leaned over and whispered in her daughter's ear. "I am so proud of you," she said. "You chose mercy over revenge, love over hatred, hope over despair. And you never backed down, never compromised who you were. That is true strength." As the celebration wound down and the guests began to depart, Nathan and Kira found themselves alone on their porch, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Alina had taken the younger children to spend the night at a neighbor's house, giving her parents some privacy. It was just the two of them, as it had been at the beginning. 25 years, Kira mused. It feels like both a lifetime and no time at all. "I know what you mean," Nathan said. "I still remember that day on the mountain road like it was yesterday. I remember seeing you surrounded by those bandits and feeling like I had no choice but to help. It was the easiest decision I ever made." "And the best," Kira teased. "And the best," Nathan confirmed with a smile. "Well, that and deciding to marry you. That was also a pretty good call." Kira laughed and leaned her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we had not met? If you had taken a different road or if I had been killed before you arrived?" "Sometimes," Nathan admitted. "But not in a sad way. More in a grateful way that whatever forces guide this world brought us together. I think I would have survived without you, would have built my homestead and lived my life. But it would have been half a life, empty of the joy and purpose I found with you." "I would not have survived," Kira said quietly. "Those bandits would have killed me or worse. You saved my life that day, Nathan, and you have continued to save it in small ways and large every day since." Nathan turned to look at her, his storm cloud eyes full of love. "And you saved mine," he said. "Maybe not from death, but from loneliness, from purposelessness, from the kind of isolation that kills the soul even while the body lives. We saved each other, Kira. That is what love does." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, holding hands and watching the stars. The valley around them was quiet, peaceful, the kind of peace that had to be built and maintained through constant effort and good faith. It was not perfect, would never be perfect, but it was good and it was real and it was theirs. "I have been thinking," Nathan said eventually, "about legacy, about what we leave behind when our time comes." Kira felt a chill at the mention of endings, but she pushed it aside. "What have you been thinking?" "I want to set aside a portion of our land as a sanctuary," Nathan said. "A place where anyone, human or orc or anything else, can find refuge if they need it. A place where the only rule is respect for others, where no one is turned away for their species or their past. We could deed it to Alina and her siblings, with instructions that it remain open for any who need it, in perpetuity." Kira felt tears prick at her eyes. "That is beautiful, Nathan. A lasting symbol of what we have tried to build here." "Will you help me plan it?" Nathan asked. "I want it to be both of ours, reflecting both our traditions and values." "Of course," Kira said. "We will design it together as we have designed everything else in our life." They spent the following months working on the sanctuary, setting aside 20 acres near the creek where the land was most beautiful. They built a small meeting house, a barn for travelers' animals, and several cabins for temporary shelter. They planted an orchard that would provide food for visitors, and created a garden space where anyone could work if they chose. Most importantly, they carved a stone marker and set it at the entrance, with words in both human common tongue and Orcish. "Here stands a bridge between peoples, built on the foundation of one couple's love. All are welcome who come in peace. May those who pass through these gates find rest, fellowship, and hope for a better tomorrow." Established by Nathan and Kira Driscoll in the 25th year of their partnership. The sanctuary opened in the spring, and within days it had its first visitors. A young orc man fleeing an arranged marriage, and a human woman who had been cast out by her family for defending orc neighbors. Nathan and Kira welcomed them both, offering shelter and advice, helping them plan their next steps. Word of the sanctuary spread quickly, and soon it was regularly hosting travelers and refugees, becoming exactly what Nathan and Kira had envisioned. More years passed, bringing the inevitable sorrows of age. Nathan's knees began to ache from decades of hard labor, and he moved more slowly on cold mornings. Kira's strength, while still formidable, was not what it had once been. They began to rely more on their children and grandchildren to maintain the homestead, though they remained active participants in the community. It was in their 32nd year of marriage that Nathan fell ill. It started as a simple cold, but progressed into something more serious, a fever that would not break no matter what remedies they tried. Kira sat by his bedside for days, refusing to leave, holding his hand and whispering to him even when he slipped into unconsciousness. "You cannot leave me yet," she told him fiercely. "We have too much left to do, too many years still ahead of us. You promised me a lifetime, Nathan Driscoll, and I am holding you to that promise." Nathan's eyes fluttered open, and he managed a weak smile. "A lifetime," he whispered. "That is what I promised, and that is what you have had. Every moment with you has been worth 10 normal lifetimes, Kira. I have lived so fully, loved so completely because of you." "Do not talk like that," Kira said, but her voice broke. "You are going to recover. You have to." "I am trying," Nathan said, squeezing her hand with what little strength he had. "For you, I am trying." And try he did. With the help of healers from both human and orc communities, drawing on the combined medical knowledge of both peoples, Nathan fought his way back from the edge. It took weeks, but gradually the fever broke and his strength began to return. Kira cried with relief when he finally sat up on his own and demanded real food instead of broth. "You scared me," she said, and the understatement made Nathan laugh weakly. "I scared myself," he admitted. "But I am too stubborn to die yet. Besides, I promised you a lifetime, and I keep my promises." The illness left Nathan frailer than he had been, but it also gave them both a renewed appreciation for the time they had left. They spent more hours simply sitting together, talking about their memories, about the life they had built, about the children and grandchildren who would carry their legacy forward. On their 35th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a quieter celebration, just family and close friends. Alina stood up to speak, her voice thick with emotion. "When I was young," she said, "I did not fully understand how remarkable my parents were. I thought everyone had a human father and an orc mother, that mixed families were normal. It was not until I grew older that I realized how rare and precious what you two built actually is." She looked at Nathan and Kira, her eyes shining. "You taught me that love is a choice, one that must be made over and over again every day. You taught me that courage is not the absence of fear, but acting despite it. You taught me that home is not a place but a person or people who see you truly and love you anyway. Thank you for being not just my parents but my example of what love should be." Marcus, their son, nodded in agreement. "Everything I know about respect and partnership, I learned from watching you two work together. You never diminished each other, never tried to make one subordinate to the other. You were always partners, always equals, always united. That is the kind of marriage I am trying to build with my own wife, and it is the example I want to set for my children." Little Kira, now a young woman, added her voice. "You two built a bridge where none existed before. And now, because of you, there are bridges all over the frontier. Mixed families, mixed communities, people learning to see past prejudice and build something better. That is your legacy, and it will outlast all of us." Nathan and Kira held each other and cried, overwhelmed by their children's words, by the life they had lived, and the love they had given and received. They had never set out to change the world, only to build a good life together. But in doing so, in choosing love over fear every single day for 35 years, they had indeed changed the world, at least their small corner of it. The years continued to pass, gentler now but no less sweet. Nathan and Kira became the valley's elders, the ones people came to for advice and wisdom. They saw their grandchildren grow and have children of their own, a new generation that would grow up in a world more tolerant and understanding than the one they had been born into. On what would be their 40th wedding anniversary, Nathan woke up feeling strange. There was no pain, just a profound sense of peace and completion. He looked over at Kira, who was still sleeping beside him as she had for 40 years, her green skin silvered with age but still beautiful to him. "Kira," he said softly, and she woke immediately, always attuned to his voice. "What is it?" she asked, searching his face with concern. "I love you," Nathan said. "I have loved you from the day I first saw you surrounded by bandits, trying to be brave when you must have been terrified. I have loved you through every season, every challenge, every joy and sorrow. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Kira Driscoll, and I thank whatever forces brought us together." Kira's eyes widened with understanding and fear. "Nathan, no, not yet, please not yet." "I am not going anywhere immediately," Nathan said, though they both knew he was not being entirely truthful. "But I want you to know, while I can say it clearly, that these 40 years have been the greatest gift of my life. And if I have to leave you before I am ready, I need you to know that you should keep living, keep building, keep loving. Do not mourn me over long. Celebrate what we had and find joy in what remains." "You stubborn man," Kira said, her voice breaking. "You are supposed to let me go first." "Orcs do not live as long as humans usually do. You were supposed to outlive me." "You are half orc only in blood," Nathan said with a smile. "In stubbornness and strength you are full orc, which means you will probably outlive us all." He cupped her face gently. "Promise me, Kira. Promise you will keep living fully, even after I am gone." "I promise," Kira whispered, because she could deny him nothing. "But you promise me something too. Promise you will fight to stay as long as you can, that you will not leave me one moment before you have to." "I promise," Nathan said, and kissed her with all the love and passion that 40 years had not diminished. He kept that promise for another 5 years, living with declining health but undiminished spirit. They continued to work together, though at a slower pace, tending the sanctuary and advising the community. They watched their great-grandchildren take their first steps and speak their first words, creating new branches on the family tree they had planted. And then, on a quiet autumn evening with Kira holding his hand and their family gathered around, Nathan Driscoll closed his eyes for the last time. His passing was peaceful, without pain, the kind of death he had earned through a life lived with honor and love. Kira sat with his body for a long time, unwilling to let go even though she knew he was gone. Finally, Alina gently pulled her mother away and helped her prepare for the funeral rites. They buried Nathan on the high point of the property, where he had proposed to Kira 45 years earlier, overlooking the valley they had helped shape. The funeral was attended by hundreds of people, humans and orcs standing together to honor a man who had lived his values and changed their world through the simple act of loving across boundaries. Kira spoke at the funeral, her voice steady despite her grief. "My husband Nathan saved my life on a mountain road 45 years ago," she said. "But that was only the first of countless times he saved me. He saved me from loneliness and despair, from cynicism and lost hope. He gave me a home and a family, a purpose and a partnership that enriched every day of my life. He was a good man, a rare man, and I will love him until I draw my last breath and beyond. After the funeral, Kira struggled with Nathan's absence. The homestead felt empty without him, even though it was full of children and grandchildren. She went through the motions of living, fulfilling her duties and maintaining her routines, but part of her was counting the days until she could join Nathan wherever he had gone. Alina recognized her mother's grief and gently intervened. "Papa would not want you to fade away," she said. "He made you promise to keep living fully. Honor that promise, Mama. Find something to give your days purpose again." So Kira threw herself into the sanctuary, expanding it and developing programs to help refugees integrate into the community. She worked with young Kira to compile the historical records they had been gathering, creating a comprehensive account of how the valley had transformed from a place of prejudice to one of cooperation. She spent time with her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, telling them stories of their grandfather and the world he had helped create. Slowly, painfully, life regained some of its color. Kira would never stop missing Nathan, would never stop feeling the empty space where he had been, but she found ways to carry that grief while still honoring his memory through continued living. She lived for another 10 years after Nathan's death, long enough to see the sanctuary become a permanent institution, long enough to see mixed marriages become common enough that they barely drew comment anymore, long enough to see the world she and Nathan had dreamed of become reality. When Kira finally died, peacefully in her sleep at the age of 78, she was laid to rest beside Nathan on the hilltop overlooking the valley. Their children carved a single stone to mark both graves, with an inscription that told their story. "Here lie Nathan and Kira Driscoll, human and orc, husband and wife, partners in all things. They met on a mountain road when hate surrounded her and hope seemed lost. He rode in and took her to safety, and together they built a bridge between peoples that will stand for generations. May all who pass this place remember that love is stronger than prejudice, that courage can change the world, and that two people who choose to stand together can accomplish the impossible." The valley continued to thrive for generations after their deaths, a living monument to their legacy. The sanctuary they founded became a model that was replicated throughout the frontier. Mixed marriages became increasingly common, and the barriers between humans and orcs gradually eroded. Their children, grandchildren, and descendants carried forward the values Nathan and Kira had lived: respect across differences, partnership over dominance, love over fear. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, when travelers stopped at the sanctuary and looked up at the hilltop where Nathan and Kira were buried, they swore they could see two figures standing there, hand in hand, watching over the valley they had loved. Whether this was truth or legend, no one could say, but it brought comfort to those who believed that love like theirs could not be contained by death, that it echoed forward through time, touching all who came after. The story of the bandits who circled an orc woman on a mountain road, and the human who rode in to save her, became legend throughout the northern valleys. It was told and retold, embellished and simplified, but at its core it always carried the same message: that in a moment of crisis, when hate seemed ascendant and hope seemed lost, one person's choice to act with courage and compassion had changed everything. That single decision to see past differences and extend a hand in friendship had rippled outward in ways Nathan never could have imagined, transforming not just one life but hundreds, thousands, shaping an entire region's future. And so the story ended not with death but with legacy, not with an ending but with a continuation. For Nathan and Kira Driscoll had built something that outlasted them both. A bridge between peoples, a model for how to love across boundaries, a proof that the impossible could be made real through courage, commitment, and unwavering love. Their story lived on in their descendants, in the sanctuary that still welcomed all who needed it, in the mixed communities that now thrived throughout the frontier, and in the hearts of all who heard their tale and dared to hope that love, in the end, was stronger than hate.